welcome to another new episode of Strange Encounters, the home of all things paranormal, supernatural, and out of this world, where tonight we once again take a look at the mysterious and unexplained world of alien and UFO encounters. Get ready to listen to some amazing and allegedly true... Oh, wait a minute, what's happening? What's going on?
Howdy folks, and welcome to Strange Encounters, the home of all things paranormal, supernatural, and out of this world. The regular host has been abducted, and I'm filling in for this episode. Or at least part of it. We'll have to see when they drop them off. I'm going to share a few of my sightings, and we're going to start with my first UFO encounter, which got me interested in the subject and motivated me to spend, well, too much time and money going UFO hunting. In the spring of 2006, two buddies and myself were on our way back to my house in the small town of Becker, Minnesota. It was evening, but still light out. Kids were playing outside and people walking their dog. Anyway, we were driving down the main road while the other passenger and myself were staring out the window. We saw what we thought was a plane, but it was extremely low to the ground and didn't seem to be traveling very fast at all. Needless to say, that caught our attention, and my buddy made a comment about it as I was thinking the exact same thing. It started to slow down to the point a plane would just fall out of the sky, and eventually it came to a complete stop. It wasn't miles away, it was blocks away, so we yelled at the driver and told him to turn around and go back to where it had stopped. I'm not sure what my buddy was thinking, but I personally didn't jump to the conclusion of alien UFO. Rather, it was probably a helicopter, but I was still curious why a helicopter would stop there. It stopped in a dirt parking lot of some baseball fields behind a trailer park right next to our high school. As we were rounding the corner, going into the dirt parking lot of the ball fields, we see a bright light hovering just above the tree height. I measured the distance with my drone a couple years ago, and the approximate distance was 350 feet in front of us and 65 feet in the air. We were close to this thing. It did not produce any noise, and my buddy said his window was open, but I can't confirm. It didn't kick up any dust from the dirt parking lot, and it just hovered there, not moving. We sat in silence and stared at it for what felt like minutes, but honestly might have only been 20 seconds. Eventually, the driver turned the headlights off, and this is where things get crazy. It turned 90 degrees and looked right at us. My buddy even said it tilted down a little. Yes, it looked like a ball of light, but it was very obvious it turned. Now that it was looking at us, it turned 180 degrees and was facing away from us, but it shot off to the left and stopped on a dime, maybe 100 yards away. There was no acceleration or stopping time. It just moved and stopped instantly. Then it jumped to the right, roughly back to the original spot, again starting and stopping instantly. It did this a few times, back and forth, left to right. Once it did that a few times and was back to the starting point, it paused for a moment and then shot straight south into the air, which would have been the direction we were parked and easily visible to us. It turned into a tiny dot in a blink of an eye. It was mind-blowingly fast. Absolutely nothing moves that fast. Except for that thing, apparently. I've always been curious why it stopped there. I've often joked that it was abducting someone, or maybe even dropping off one of their own. These next two stories are still both mine, but they're shorter, less intense, and took place within the next 2 years. After the first sighting, I was a believer, and my logic was that it stopped there for a reason, and again, we can speculate on what that reason is, but regardless, it had a reason to stop. And maybe, just maybe, it would come back. So after work, I started to drive up and down the highway that had a decent view of the entire area. One night, I noticed a bright looking dot off in the distance straight ahead of me, so I kept driving towards it. This would have been maybe 5 minutes drive from where we saw the previous one. I get to a red light, and I go into the turn lane because it looked like it was going to pass over the crossroad. While I was waiting for a green light, it did pass over, and it looked like it was on the same path as the original UFO. However, this one looked slightly different. It was still flying pretty slow, but not absurdly so. And it was definitely low to the ground. I got a good view of the bottom of it. It only seemed to be producing light out of the side since I got a clear view of the bottom. It was 100% round. No wings, no angles, no edges, nothing. But it did have some funny design with lines all over it. I've always compared it to the thing from the original Star Wars that shot lasers at Luke while he was training with a blindfold. It looked like that, just bigger and glowing on the sides. I actually did manage to get a picture of it, but it was during the flip phone era and our phone cameras were terrible, especially in low light. My adrenaline was pumping and I was shaking, so the picture was really just a bunch of blurred lines. I still showed that picture off to pretty much anybody, but sadly I no longer have it since I didn't know how to transfer pictures off those types of phones. It didn't have email, or if it did, I didn't know how to use it. Didn't have a data plan, there was no GPS, it was just basic call, text, and take really crappy pictures. Still, I wish I had that picture. It would be the worst UFO picture of all time, and that is saying something. I'm not sure exactly how long later, but I kept going out after work driving down this highway. Eventually, I see another funny bright dot off in the distance. I keep driving towards it, but it was further away from the previous one, maybe another 5 minutes down the road, so 10 minutes away from the first one. As I get closer, I realize it was flying south while the other two were flying from east to west. Regardless, I keep driving towards it, and it flew pretty much directly over me while I was driving. Now, I would have stopped, gotten out, but at the time, I was content with just looking up through my windshield. This one was completely different. It was dark out, but I could see a solid black V outline. Imagine a bold uppercase V, but it had 5 glowing white circles on the bottom of it, 1 at each point and 2 in the middle. It wasn't a pyramid, there was empty space between the wing-like parts, and it wasn't a B-2 bomber or anything similar to that. Anyway, this thing just kept flying at a steady pace in the direction it was going. Nothing about it looked or did anything that we technically can't do, but it just didn't seem normal. I don't know of any jets that have those glowing circles or any that are shaped exactly like that, but it definitely wasn't the same craft as the previous two. There's a few other odd lights I've seen, but those are the 3 main UFO sightings that made me a believer, the first one more so for obvious reasons. I ended up moving to California and spent a few years there. When I came back to Minnesota, I moved about 45 minutes away from where all those took place. Eventually, I bought a nice camera, a really nice camera lens to go UFO hunting, and I spent a lot of time out there during the recent plague outbreak. Sadly, I haven't been that close to one again, but I did manage to record one of those funny lights from a distance. Not great UFO footage, but it's something. And I'm convinced that area is significant to them for some reason. Technically, there is a nuclear power plant right there, so maybe that's it. If I can leave you with any advice, skeptic or believer, it doesn't matter. My entire outlook on life and hobbies I've pursued all changed because me and a couple friends wanted a closer look at a funny light. So stay curious.
A special thanks and shout out to ISO UFO, our guest host for tonight's episode. ISO UFO has his own YouTube channel, which is linked in the description below the video. He's both a YouTuber and a UFO hunter and investigator, so drop by his channel to show him some love. My first and second UFO Encounters by Crow Reader. When I was 12, my dad, me, and my 2 younger brothers witnessed a large black triangle UFO flying about 100 feet above a cow field at about 10 p.m. at night. It was huge, had red lights on the corners, and a piercing searchlight sweeping the ground below it. It was about 150 yards distant from us. My dad turned off the truck, rolled down the windows, and the UFO was completely silent. We were all surprised. I said I wanted to go stand in the light to see if aliens were real. My dad said, "Hell no you aren't," fired up the F-150, and we drove away. No abduction, sorry. We all remember it the same way 30 years later. Thing is, we were retelling the story at Thanksgiving, and my younger brother looks at me and goes, "Hey, you remember the second one we saw?" And I say, "What are you talking about?" And he says, "You know, when you were 16 and you were driving and your girlfriend and me were passengers. We saw another one that turned on its side and flew away real fast." I'm thinking, I have no idea what you're talking about. So I email former girlfriend, ask her about it, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I will never forget that." and proceeds to tell me more details than my brother remembered. I have no memory of the second encounter. I have no idea why. Perhaps I did get to take a trip with the Star People after all. This happened near Greensport, Alabama, around 1989 and then 1993. I believe there were cattle mutilations reported in the area back then. The truth is out there. I witnessed a UAP 9 years ago by, I believe, for real. Me and my friend were walking into the city center of Carlisle, England at around 10:30 p.m. when a blue glow suddenly filled the sky. This was immediately followed by the arrival of what I can only describe as a blue ball trembling in the sky 100 meters above my town. Imagine a positive magnet trapped between two negative magnets and the way it would vibrate. I would estimate that we were around 300 meters from being beneath the UAP. I have to admit that I was not only completely stunned by the beautiful light, but also terrified. Thoughts of my family quickly filled my head as this genuinely seemed like a world-ending event. And as quickly as it came, it went. I didn't see which way it came from, but I saw the direction it left, and it literally beamed into outer space. There were two older gentlemen walking about 20 feet in front of me and my friend. One of them turned to us and said, "What do you make of that then, lads?" I didn't have a reply for him. I turned to my friend as if to confirm that this was actually happening, went crazy for a minute, and then we went about our evening. I can't give an accurate size, but it was large enough to make me think I was about to die. 4 Grays Watching Me and My Girlfriend by Corona Throwaway, 1911. Last night, I awoke to the sound of my fan being bumped into. I saw a pair of legs before me, very thin. I looked around without moving and saw 4 grays. One was taller than the others. When I made eye contact with the one directly in front of me peering at the corner, I passed back out. Now, I didn't think anything of this and assumed it was a bad dream, until my girlfriend told me that last night she had a dream that 4 aliens were around us, with the same taller one. She blamed me and forced herself to go back to sleep because she didn't want to deal with it. We talked about the past several months, and we have both had other alien dreams, though not like last night, where we had the same experience. I don't know if it's real, similar dreams, or what. I just wanted to share. Black Helicopter by Ivanhoe. This happened in 2013 or 2014. I owned a high-tech engineering company in Gardena, California. My building was a newer tilt-up construction, 10,500 square feet with 20-foot ceilings. My neighbor was digging up my front yard to install power lines for new machines they were installing, and I went out to check on how that was going. I worked late, and it was around 8 p.m. I happened to look up and saw a black helicopter hovering about 5 to 7 feet above the top of my building and about 3 to 6 feet away from the front. I stared at it for a moment and then took note that there was no sound coming from it. The next thing I noticed was that the leaves on the trees in the front were not flailing about. There were also no lights of any sort on the craft. I had often been close to helicopters, and they make a hell of a racket and blow up lots of dust, but there was none of that. No sound, no dust, no lights. I noticed that it was completely flat black. From my view, I would have clearly been able to look into the windows and view the pilot. However, the windows were blacked out. But the two strangest things I noticed was that this helicopter had no tail rotor, and the main rotor was spinning much too slowly for it to maintain its hovering position. I looked up at a 35 to 45 degree angle from vertical for a good 30 to 40 seconds. Then it began to move slowly forward over the top of my building. The next strange behavior was that it did not pitch forward as helicopters need to do to move forward. It moved straight ahead where I could not see it anymore as it went over my building. I then ran around to the side of my building to see where it went, and I could no longer see it. It's as if it had just disappeared. This next account is taken from an interview with police officer Herbert Schirmer, who talks about being taken aboard a UFO in Nebraska on December 3rd, 1967. This happened around 2:30, but around 2:20 I was checking 2 gas stations, and I left the last gas station to pull out onto the highway. I was making radio contact with the Wahoo Sheriff's Office because we didn't have radio communications available in the city at nighttime because we couldn't afford it. So I told them that everything was all secure. I pulled onto the highway, and after putting the mic down, I saw some flashing lights in front of me. It first appeared to be a truck. As I got closer and put the high beams of the lights in the patrol car on this object, the lights started raising up in the air about 40 feet. I think I was something like 50 yards from this. These lights were flashing, and they got bigger as I got close to it. It seemed like they were red flashing lights coming out of a porthole which sort of circled the craft. It had a catwalk going around the center of it. It was shaped like a football, very metallic, like a very shiny bumper on a car. It had sort of a red-orangey glow coming from beneath it. Then there was this white flash that came onto me in the patrol car. I felt as if we were being pulled, and it was being pulled up the side of the bank to the left of the road and up toward this field. I felt nothing. At first I felt kind of stunned and shocked, and then I felt sort of tingly, and as the car and I moved up the bank to the top of this field, this object landed, and some legs came out, and it sat down. I was just sitting there motionless. I couldn't move. I may have had my mouth open. I don't remember, being probably scared. This hatch came open, and this light came out of the hatch, and this form came down and looked the form of a human being. This form started walking toward the patrol car with an object in both its hands. He was walking straight toward the patrol car, and as he was doing this, another form came out and started walking toward the patrol car also. It got in front of it, walked up to the front of the patrol car with this object in his hand, which looked sort of squarish oval type. It looked like it had a lens in front of it. And the only thing I could think was, oh my God, what's going to happen now? And this green light came out all over the car, and then so it went back in again. I felt a sensation then, and I felt nothing, like I was just there, and that was it. This other being started walking up toward the car. I was looking straight. I couldn't even move my head. He walked up to the car, and the window was about 3/4 the way rolled down, and he had an object in his hand. A silver object that looked like a big pencil with a round ball on the end of it, and he presses this against my neck, which I felt some pain and said, ouch. Then he stepped back, and I sort of sat there, and he opened up the car door, and I sort of raised up out of the patrol car, and I was looking at him, and he was looking at me, and he said, "Are you the watchman of this town?" And my response was, "Yes, sir." He said, "Come with me, watchman," and we started moving toward the spacecraft. It felt like I was walking on air. We got up to the hatch to where you went inside of the spacecraft, and we just sort of floated up into the first level. He says to me, "Watchman, come with me." And we were in a circular room, and there were cylinders about 4.5 feet high and about 2 feet wide that circled the whole room. And it sort of had like a cable running through it. 2 cables running through these. They looked like tall batteries to me. And then in the center of the room was a huge cocoon, like this shaped object was spinning, and it was giving off colors like the rainbow, and was about 20 feet long. It seemed like these cables were coming up and connecting to these 2 block things that came down on each end of it. We walked the complete circle in there. I said, "What is this?" And he said, "This is how our craft operates." He said it operates on electrical reversible magnetism. Then I looked at him, and he said, "Come with me, watchman." And we walked back over to where I came up in with him, and this glass sheet came down, and we stepped onto this and we moved up into the second level of the craft. And lo and behold, I've never seen anything like it before in my life, with so many different types of instrument panels and computer type things that you just wouldn't believe it. This cone thing was right in the center of the floor. You see half of it from on top and half of it from the bottom, but it gave off a red glow that sort of, not flashed, but kind of died down and then came back up again. And he says, "Watchman, come with me." And we walked over to a screen that was up on the side wall, and it was sort of like a TV screen. And he pressed some buttons and I guess flipped some switches. I wasn't paying too much attention to him. I was looking at the screen. And some stars in the sky appeared on there, and he put his finger up and he said, "This is where we're from, Watchman." Then he put his hand back down. He didn't say where, and he didn't say the name. He just pointed. The purpose that we're here is to get electricity. And there was another being standing a little distance away, and the man turned to him, and they both looked at each other, and he started depressing buttons, and he says, "Watch, Watchman." There was this antenna on the outside of the spacecraft, which angled toward a power unit, and this bolt went out, a color I've never seen before in my life. I don't even think I could describe it. It went out and came back, and this stayed like this for about 3 minutes, then it went off. And he turned, and he looked at me, and I felt as if I was getting an awful lot of roll on input of words that I couldn't understand. He reached up and he touched me on the shoulder, and he felt real when he touched me. And I think at that time I did touch him, and he felt real to me. And he says, "Watchman, come with me." We walked back over to the exit where we came up, and the glass sheet came down again, and we went up into the third part of the craft, which was the observation deck, he said. As we stepped off, he said, "Watchman, come with me." And we walked over, and we were standing there looking out a big plate glass window type thing. And there was a control panel right in front of it, and there were 2 chairs that looked like dentist chairs, but really the superstructure of a chair, better than a dentist chair. We looked out the window, and I could see this one being walking back and forth by where my patrol car was, and I think I said, "Wow." And he turned to me and said something I don't understand. And he said some more things that I didn't understand or couldn't make out, and I still don't. And then he pointed his hand toward the plate glass window, referred to the stars out there, and he says to me, "Watchman, one day you yourself will see the universe as I have." And he reached up and touched me on the shoulder, like a man does to steer you away, and he says, "Come with me, Watchman." Then he stopped, and I turned around to look at him, and I felt like I was getting more input of something that I couldn't understand. Then he says, "Watchman, come with me." And we walked over, and we went down all the way out of the craft. As we got outside, this other being started walking back toward the spacecraft and boarded it. As we were walking toward my patrol car, we stopped right by the patrol car, and I turned to look at him, and he was looking at me. And then again, I felt like I was receiving an input of words of some kind that I couldn't understand. He sort of lifted his hand and turned, then he walked back to the spacecraft, floated up inside. This catwalk thing started spinning. The lights started flashing off and on. This red orangish glow came out from beneath it. It started lifting up in the air, and I guess it got about 100 feet high and just shot straight out of sight. Let me tell you, I was scared. I started feeling me again. When I was aboard the spacecraft, I had probably no feeling at all. My body was tingling, I was perspiring, I was hot, I felt nauseated. I got back into the patrol car, I turned it around and hit back for the police station at a high rate of speed. I tried to make communication with the Wahoo Sheriff's office, and it appeared the radio was dead. I got to the station, I jumped out of the car and fast walked into the police station, and I noticed that the wall clock in the police station said 1 minute after 3 a.m. Well, I went directly to the bathroom. I had to go to the bathroom, but to drink water because I was hot, and I walked back into the main room of the police station. We had a real small police station. It was about 20 by 20. And I sat there at the table and I lit a cigarette. And I said, wow, what the hell happened? Something happened to me. Did I really see a flying saucer? Did this really happen to me? Cowichan UFO sighting. In an intriguing incident that unfolded at Cowichan District Hospital in British Columbia, Canada, Mrs. Doreen Kendall, a practical nurse, found herself at the center of a baffling encounter with an unidentified flying object. This unusual event occurred on January 5th, 1970, when Mrs. Kendall, stationed on the second floor of the hospital, caught sight of a circular UFO with a transparent dome through a nearby window. Positioned about 40 feet away, the object appeared to hover effortlessly in midair, leaving a lasting impression on the witness. According to Mrs. Kendall, within the dome-shaped structure of the UFO, she discerned the presence of two figures diligently operating what seemed to be levers, although she was the only one to witness the occupants firsthand. Several other nurses claimed to have observed the unidentified craft as it departed from the scene. This astonishing sighting has since become a topic of intrigue among UFO enthusiasts. To delve into the specifics of the incident, Mrs. Kendall, a registered nurse residing in Nanaimo, regularly commuted to the Cowichan District Hospital. On that eventful night, Mrs. Kendall and Mrs. Frida Wilson commenced their midnight to 8 a.m. shift on the second floor of the East Wing. As the morning hours rolled in at around 5 a.m., they entered a 4-bed ward to begin their routine care. While Nurse Wilson tended to the patient near the door, Nurse Kendall focused her attention on the patient in the adjacent bed, conveniently positioned by the window. At this juncture, Nurse Kendall proceeded to draw back the curtains, a common practice during those early morning hours. As she stood there peering outside, Nurse Wilson continued with her duties. It was during this ordinary act that Doreen Kendall's reality took an extraordinary turn. Her subsequent account described the following scene. Hovering approximately 60 feet above a small patio, a saucer-shaped object resembling a sphere with a circular airfoil adorned with rim lights caught Nurse Kendall's attention. She estimated its diameter to be around 50 feet, as it maintained its position at the level of the third or children's floor, roughly 60 feet away from the hospital's outer wall. Initially tilted toward her, the upper portion of the object became visible, seemingly illuminated from below rather than from above. The transparent top revealed a red light emanating from the bottom, which Nurse Kendall noticed later. Inside the transparent cupola, she started to witness two humanoid figures. Initially visible from the side, their upper bodies only became fully exposed when the object tipped in the direction of the hospital. Positioned one behind the other, both figures stood in front of stools with backs. The individual on Nurse Kendall's far right faced what resembled a chrome instrument panel comprising of a series of large and small circles, possibly dials, brightly illuminated. Impressively built and towering over 6 feet tall, both men captured her attention. While the object remained suspended in midair, the figure on Nurse Kendall's left turned toward her, extending his hand to touch the back of the other individual near the instrument panel. The latter then reached down and grabbed a rod-like device topped with a spherical extremity resembling an airplane's joystick. Moving the stick up and down, the craft tilted towards Nurse Kendall, affording her a captivating glimpse of its interior as well as the occupants. Notably, she described the hand of the figure who acknowledged her presence as flesh-colored and human-like. Both entities donned dark clothing, with their features concealed by some form of headgear, presumably made from the same material as their attire. Mesmerized by the spectacle, Nurse Kendall was so engrossed that she initially neglected to inform anyone of what she was witnessing. However, As the UFO began to gradually move away, she realized the urgency of sharing her experience, but also anticipated skepticism from others. She called out to Nurse Wilson, who promptly approached the window and caught a glimpse of the peculiar object positioned just outside. Perplexed, Nurse Wilson exclaimed, "What on earth is that?" To which Miss Kendall responded, "I guess it's a flying saucer." Filled with a mix of excitement and disbelief, the two nurses swiftly made their way to the nurses' station down the hallway, eager to relay their extraordinary encounter. Although their initial accounts were met with skepticism, eventually 2 additional nurses arrived at the ward, followed shortly by a third, all bearing witness to the lights emanating from the disc-shaped craft. By this time, the object had distanced itself considerably, but remained clearly visible to all present. Intriguingly, one of the nurses rushed to a nearby bathroom, from where she observed the UFO circling the area 5 or 6 times before abruptly streaking away toward the northeast. Reflecting on the encounter, Mrs. Kendall later revealed that she had experienced a sense of curiosity rather than fear during her sighting. She expressed her belief that the UFO may have been experiencing some form of mechanical trouble, which could explain its presence in such close proximity to the hospital. The remarkable incident that unfolded at Cowichan District Hospital on that fateful day continues to capture the imaginations of both skeptics and believers. Mrs. Kendall's detailed description of the circular UFO, with its transparent dome, the presence of 2 humanoid figures operating levers within, and the subsequent corroboration of other nurses witnessing the craft's departure, all contribute to the mystery surrounding this extraordinary event. While some may dismiss such accounts as mere flights of fancy, others find themselves fascinated by the possibility of extraterrestrial encounters. The Cowichan UFO sighting stands as a testament to the enduring allure of the unknown and serves as a reminder that the vast expanse of the universe still holds secrets yet to be revealed. As the search for answers continues, those involved in this baffling encounter at Cowichan District Hospital can only speculate about the true nature and origin of the enigmatic craft and its otherworldly occupants. In this next segment, we're looking at some of the most classic and well-known cases of encounters with the strange, including sightings of unidentified flying objects, alien abductions, ghost stories, cryptid encounters, and other unexplained phenomena. So, sit back and prepare to be taken on a journey through some of the most captivating and mysterious stories of the strange and unknown. In this episode, we take a look at the Kelly-Hopkinsville Encounters of 1955. This famous encounter is where the term "little green men" originated, and we'll soon see why. The Kelly-Hopkinsville Encounters, 1955. The Kelly-Hopkinsville Encounter is a famous UFO sighting that took place on August 21, 1955, in rural Kentucky, USA. The incident involved 2 families, the Taylors and the Suttons, who were spending the evening at the Sutton farmhouse in the town of Kelly. At around 7 p.m., Billy Ray Taylor, a visitor from Pennsylvania, went outside to get water from the pump and noticed strange lights in the sky. Upon closer inspection, he saw a disc-shaped craft with different colored lights hovering in the western sky. He quickly ran back inside to alert the others, but Elmer Sutton, the owner of the farmhouse, dismissed his claims and said it was a shooting star. However, an hour later, the family's dog began barking loudly and then suddenly went quiet. Billy Ray and Elmer went outside to investigate, armed with shotguns. They were met with the sight of a strange being with a silver body, long arms with talon-like hands, and thin, weak-looking legs. The creature's ears were especially pronounced, with a long and pointy look to them. At times, it appeared to be floating and moved in a strange manner, as if it was wading through water. The 2 men unloaded their guns on the creature out of fear, But to their surprise, the bullets bounced off with a metal drum-like sound. The creature turned and headed towards the woods at great speed. The men decided to chase after it, but before they could leave, they saw a small hand reaching for them from the roof. They quickly shot at it, and down floated another seemingly identical creature to the ground, which scurried away into nearby trees. Throughout the evening, the creatures kept coming back and peeking through the windows, as if they were taunting the terrified family. The group of witnesses counted around 12 to 15 of these creatures. The creatures were scampering on top of the roof, trying to break into the farmhouse. The men of the family frantically shot at the windows and walls in a desperate attempt to get rid of the alien creatures. This went on for hours before the family decided to rush out and get help. At 11 p.m., the two families hurried outside and managed to get to their vehicles. In a near panic state, they drove directly to the Hopkinsville police station, where they were led to Sheriff Russell Greenwell, the town's chief of police. Greenwell was skeptical of their story, but upon checking their pulse, he realized they were genuinely scared, beyond reason, by something beyond their comprehension. The Suttons were the kind who rarely asked for help from the authorities, and they were sober and completely sane. Eventually, Greenwell and 20 other officers were convinced to go to the scene. They noticed the bullet holes that riddled the house, along with hundreds of empty bullet shells that were spread around. However, there was no sign of the strange intruders at all. The police went around the neighborhood and discovered that other people, including police officers and a state highway trooper, witnessed strange lights and noises coming from the sky. The highway trooper reported seeing meteor-like objects in the air that made a sound similar to artillery fire. The police tried to locate the source of the lights or any trace of the creatures, but they found nothing. The incident made national headlines, and it was investigated by various authorities, including the Air Force, who concluded that it was likely a case of misidentification of natural phenomena. Adding further mystery to the incident, there were no footprints, bloodstains, or any other evidence left behind by the strange beings. There was no physical proof that the creatures had ever existed other than the eyewitness accounts of the Sutton and Taylor families. The Hopkinsville Encounter became one of the most famous and well-documented cases of an alleged close encounter with extraterrestrial life. The incident garnered national attention and was even featured in Life magazine. It was studied by UFO researchers and became a topic of interest for skeptics and believers alike. The witnesses were considered credible and sincere, and there was no clear explanation for the strange events that occurred that night. Over the years, there have been many theories and explanations offered for what happened in Kelly-Hopkinsville. Some have suggested that the incident was a hoax or a case of mass hysteria. Others have proposed that the witnesses encountered some form of experimental aircraft or advanced military technology. However, despite numerous investigations and speculations, no definitive explanation has ever been found for the bizarre events of August 21st, 1955. The incident remains a mystery and continues to fascinate UFO enthusiasts and skeptics alike. Thanks for watching another episode of Strange Encounters. We'd like to thank everyone for their support, and we hope that you've all enjoyed listening to our stories. The channel continues to grow, and we appreciate all of you for being a part of it. So thanks again. We love to hear from our viewers, so send your own experiences with the unknown to our email at verystrangeencounters@gmail.com. You can also submit your stories to the website linked below. You can join us on Reddit at r/verystrangeencounters. If you would like to support us, there are links to our Patreon, buymeacoffee.com, and PayPal donate below. Thanks again for tuning into Strange Encounters. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and keep your eyes open wide and your mind open wider. You never know what strange encounters may be lurking around the corner.